Welcome. On behalf of Friedrich-Naumann Foundation for Freedom and Care, we would like to welcome you to our web talk dedicated to CARE's list of the 10 most underreported humanitarian crises 2021. It is a list you have seen a little bit, the clip CARE prepared for us, so you have an idea of the scope of the continents involved. And today, we are starting off our series with volume 1, and you've seen, sadly, it is Zambia, which is ranked country number 1 on the list of the 10 most underreported humanitarian crises affected countries, meaning that it was Zambia who didn't make it to catch the global media attention. It was the least coverage Zambia got when it comes to affected countries. And so, yeah, sadly, Zambia is our number 1, and so it is even more in need to get the highlight and to get the limelight. And this is what we are doing today. It is, again, this year too, that Friedrich-Naumann Foundation is teaming up with CARE to help to bring forgotten countries, crises that haven't made it into the news to our attention, because it is CARE's conviction and that the more attention, the more coverage crises and countries affected are getting, more donations are flowing, and with more donations, obviously, opportunities to alleviate poverty and suffering is risen. And so, in this spirit, we would like to start and open our discussion regarding Zambia. And CARE was kind enough to prepare some slides for us, so you have an idea. Not all of you might be familiar with Zambia, so you have an idea of the geographic location right now. A bit, some statistics regarding population, but I'm just quoting a little bit, statistics such as 60% of the population live below poverty level. They have less of $1 a day. This is one of the statistics we got. And another one, for example, in 2019, the World Hunger Index ranked Zambia 113 of 117 countries worldwide. So malnutrition is a huge topic in Zambia. We have a second slide. We might have a look on this. We have it already. You have given us the second one already. Thank you very much. So we have an idea. Malnutrition is very much a topic, but as well extreme weather patterns. Partly because there are patterns which are part of the region, but other ones are very much pushed by climate change. So we are talking displacements of people because floods, droughts have pushed people out of their living conditions and communities. People are in dire need of food, of clean water, of shelter. And on top of it, gender inequality is a huge topic, because it is very much and very often women are taking the brunt of this terrible situation, and they are the most suffering, trying to protect their families, trying to bring in food. And so the most vulnerable in these communities, women and girls, we are going to talk about this later on in our discussion. So it's just a little bit an idea of the scope of our web talk we have prepared for you, and we are very happy to welcome all of you on board here today. That said, I think we are ready to introduce our panel, because we're not wanting to lose time. We have an almost full hour left, so we are very happy to introduce our panelists from Lusaka with us, 2 power women from Zambia who are fighting for their country and the well-being of each and everyone. And I'm going to introduce to you the one on the left, the lady on the left, which is Chikwe Antoinette Mveda. She is country director for CARE in Zambia. In this position since June last year, but has been working on and off with CARE for a lot of time, for a longer time in the past. Chikwe has almost 20 years of senior strategic management, leadership position positions under her belt. She has been working with NGOs and private corporate sectors, representatives in Southern and Eastern African region, so familiar to the broader scope of the problems. And she's currently pursuing her doctorate in business administration with the University of Zambia. So this is exciting because Chikwe is bringing us the experience of development corporations and as well the business side on it. So we are certainly going to talk about social entrepreneurship, which is helping to promote the well-being. So we're excited to have you on board. Welcome, Chikwe.
Thank you so much, Britta, and good evening, everyone.
Right, thank you very much. So our second panelist is Rose. Rose, where are you? We had you in video. Let's see. Here she is. Here she is. Welcome, Rose. Yes, we can hear something in the background. I hope it's okay for each and everyone. Yeah, there's a little bit of technical mishap.
Anything, I can just hear some noises.
Okay, right now there's a little technical mishap. We had prepared this and it was all fine as always. So now I hope it has gone, and I'm going to introduce Rose. Rose Kashembe-Sakala is a political scientist and researcher with an extensive experience in political analysis and conflict resolution. She has been working in Southeast Africa, Ethiopia, Eritrea, and Sudan, and she is the vice president for Southern Africa of the African Liberal Network, which is an alliance of liberal democratic political parties and communities from 30 African countries. So Rose is pretty much bringing the political perspective to us, which is very important because you might know that it was only last year in August that the new Zambian president Hakainde Hichilema has been sworn in. So it's a pretty sensitive time to just make good and find a way to just lead Zambia to a more democratic future after the regime of Edgar Lungu. So we are going to address this later on when we do the political analysis. So Rose, where are you? Welcome, here you are. She's connecting again. So hopefully we've got a better audio when Rose is back with us. Let's see. Rose, you're back. Give us.
Thank you, I'm back now. I can hear you.
Perfect.
I really had a challenge.
No, it's always like this. So no worries. Yeah, welcome back. Yeah, welcome back. So we have you on board, two ladies from Zambia ready to fight and rock. And I would love to invite our audience, if you would like to participate, please use the Q&A menu button and give us your questions, your thoughts. Chikwe and Rose are ready to answer them in the course of our discussion. Great. So we are not leaving any more to discuss to time, but we are heading and diving in right in. Chikwe, can you give us an idea of how the situation is on the ground? How is it for Zambian people right now? The list is from 2021, but the situation, the humanitarian challenges haven't changed, right?
Absolutely. Yes, Britta. So, of course, the report is really referring to our 2021 season, but we similarly still are facing the same situation in terms of the harsh weather conditions that are really affecting the Zambian people. It's quite disheartening, actually, to see how these weather patterns are actually on an annual basis. They really affected a lot of communities in Zambia. So currently, as we speak, we have close to 64 districts that are affected with the flooding. So these are pretty much floods that have been taking place, I think, with the onset of the year, this 2022, early January, late December. Mm-hmm. And we have the southern province, the Muchinga, as the ones that are really facing the harsh conditions, including Eastern Province. Our indications that are coming from the disaster management and Mitigation Unit is at almost 1.58 million of our population, which you already showed there, which is like 8.4 million out of that population. We're going to actually see a lot of communities that would be heavily affected by the floods.
So what are you doing in terms of practical help? What are you offering to the people as CARE?
So currently as CARE, as it is with any humanitarian response, we're ensuring that we're providing particular, of course, non-food items to these communities, working closely with the government, of course, and we've provided with them shelter kits, hygiene kits, as well as pots and cups, recognizing that, of course, even the hospitals, we've also supported them with some of the PPEs, because remember, we're still in the midst of COVID, even if thankfully the numbers are reducing. So you find that these communities are actually facing double brands of these, of course, the crisis where they have to deal with COVID-19, fourth wave in Zambia, and also they have to actually see a lot of their places flooded. So a lot of these communities, for example, in Southern Province, Choma area, you actually see a lot of communities whose houses have actually been destroyed due to the massive rains, which means that they actually get to sleep in the court at times, or they have to actually stay with neighbors or family. At the same time, it actually means that in some of the rural communities, some of the schools again are heavily, of course, are flooded, hospitals flooded. So you look at issues of health, and also when you talk about flooding, it actually now means that these are unsafe water, drinking water for these communities that we also need to make sure that we support them. But most importantly is also looking at food items, because they actually need food relief in form of cereal, of course, and pulses, because this is definitely important for them in terms of food. So with CARE International, yes, we provided the non-food items to the heavily hit communities of Choma district and Kalomo district of the Southern Province.
Okay. We talked about the water, food, shelter. You're providing shelters too.
So what we're doing with shelter, we're actually just giving them the shelter kits. So these are tents that they can actually be able to use so that they can cover some of the houses whose roofs have been blown off. It actually means that they can use those shelters to cover their roofs or make makeshift homes for the time being. Yeah.
Okay, lovely. We're going to dive deeper later on in the discussion. I would just like to bring in Rose. Rose, you are bringing us your perspective in terms of political experience. You are currently working with the new government, right? You haven't assumed a minister rank yet. Perhaps it is in the making. You never know. but I know that you are heavily involved in talks in trying to prepare the way to a better, good governing is the big mantra you're trying to prepare and foster. Give us an idea of what it was, the old regime and the new political beginning starting last year, please.
Thank you very much for the invite to this discussion, which is very, very critical, because it borders on human rights, rule of law, and all those things. And I know that this discussion has been prompted mainly by the performance in 2020-2021, the underreporting of the humanitarian crisis at that period. 2 years of underreporting really in itself is a disaster, because what it does, it leaves you in the dark, and you don't get to know what's happening to the victims. This should never, ever be allowed to happen again, because it denies the victims access to adequate and timely assistance. It is a right, it's not a favor for victims to receive aid. When they don't receive aid in a timely manner, or they don't receive aid at all when it's needed, that in itself is a violation, a serious violation of their human rights. So some of you, those of you who have been following events in Zambia, will recall that during the crisis of 2020-2021, the PF government was in control, or rather was in a government. And at that time, when the crisis took place, which is the same 2020-2021, there was the press freedom was under siege.
Yeah.
And it's not a coincidence that actually there was not much reporting, because this could have been due to either lack of information or fear of independent reporting, which was really very, very sad. In a system where there's muzzling of the press, unfortunately, there's no transparency. And this conceals the truth in terms of the extent of the crisis, any delays or poor handling that might occur in the crisis, and even corruption in the handling of the resources meant for the victims. Briefly stated, not only issues of lack of respect for human rights arise here, but also lack of respect for the rule of law.
Yeah.
Because blocking out the media does not only cover up for lack of concern and incompetence, but it's also a common tendency where there's lack of accountability and rampant corruption. This lack of transparency does not inspire adequate support from partners at all, resulting in longer periods of suffering for the victims.
Yeah. All right.
To provide support, any partner would like to have clarity as to the extent of the crisis and the needs assessment, so they can determine what sort of assistance to provide. And without clear reports, this becomes a challenge.
Yeah.
So that's what yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Rose. So this is a first idea of what was going on, and obviously what is part of the reform process Zambia is needing to make a more democratic approach possible. Talking about the new president, Hichilema, what are in the bag when it comes to reforms? What are the things the new government is doing to alleviate the suffering for those affected in the affected communities?
Quite a bit is going on.
Yeah.
There's been some change. And the change is what really you would say a solution going forward. The UPND government, which is the current government, since 2021, anchored its election campaign on restoration of respect for human rights and the rule of law. And we have already begun to see the results. We need not be reminded that commitment to respect for human rights and the rule of law guides the behavior of the actors. Freedom of press, which is critical for reporting and transparency, is already in place. We have witnessed the reinstatement of international independent media that was unfairly closed by the government, the PF government. And with a press, humanitarian crisis can be given its due coverage now to ensure that the victims receive aid and they receive it in a timely manner. So it cannot be overemphasized that transparency and openness inspires donor confidence. Here again, if you allow me, I would like to commend the Disaster Management and Mitigation Unit, DMMU, under the current government. Because the timely reporting, as we have already recently witnessed in the case of the current crisis, whereby the DMMU, which is the Disaster Management and Mitigation Unit, was able to provide a comprehensive report in a timely manner, is critical. And as a result, we have already started seeing donor response, both local and international. And to this effect, CARE, who is with me on this forum, and the Japanese, they were able to provide donations within the first 2 weeks, of February, which is just a few weeks from the time when the disaster hit the country or the areas that were hit.
Yeah.
So now we can also see that the DMMU itself, which is part of the government, is working hand in glove with the media. They do not only inform the media as to what is happening, but they take a step further by visiting these areas along with the media or partners. So there's now that openness and transparency. You allow me maybe at a later stage also to mention one of the important things that has also happened, very significant.
Perhaps, Loris, we can just skip so Chikwa can have a part, and then you, because I know there's a lot of important reforms on the way. So we are going to address the empowerment of the grassroots level, and certainly the involvement of women in higher ranks to make sure that donation reach those in need. Right. So we are going to talk about this a little bit later, but if it's okay for you, then I'm just getting Chikwa on board again, and then we just do a little ping pong, so to allow us, to make it that way. Chikwa, please, could we start with a view on women and particularly girls, because we know that it is especially women who are taking the brunt when it comes to humanitarian crises, right?
Yes, correct.
Why is that?
Yes, as you had mentioned, of course, when we talk about humanitarian crises and responses, we have actually seen on the ground that, of course, the women and girls face the bigger brunt of this crisis, because they have to bring their families together, especially the women, mothers, because they have to bring their families together. Where they've been displaced, it means that the women have to ensure that their children and whatever little possession they can actually be able to get, they're able to shift. One of the sites where we're moving people from, I think like the fish camps, where you have a lot of women and a lot of children, you'd actually notice that a lot of them were very much looking at first carrying their children and then making sure that the child is on the plane that was provided by the government, and then they go to get the few household items. Specific, of course, when also now we go into girls, of course, girls become much more vulnerable, in these situations when we're looking at, of course, aid distribution. We are looking at protection issues, but you're also looking at their hygiene, because they're being displaced from one place to another. It actually means that the way during, for example, some of the kids, the girls, during their menses, it's very difficult to manage that side of their personal life and hygiene. A lot of schools get closed, so which means that the opportunity for girls to advance in terms of their education for a particular period of time is actually now cut off. Usually when they have to get back into the realities in a place where they're well settled, it actually means that they sort of are behind in terms of their education, which has long-lasting impact in terms of their future. And just for them to actually be a bit more confident and assertive in managing their lives. I talked about protection. It's one of our key response areas when you look at child protection. Child protection in the sense that they have to be taken to a safe environment. Safety comes first, but also we're looking at protecting them when it comes to exploitation. Because during this period, there's so many people now that are coming to support them, and also in those communities where they may be prone to sexual exploitation or sexual abuse. And when you also start looking at women, you also have issues of gender-based violence. You know, in these situations, a lot of people are stressed. And you look at a situation where even now their livelihoods are heavily impacted. And I'm talking about women that have to really focus on making sure that the family has got the food on the table, and they're looking at all the alternative ways. So I find that in some of these places where they are actually, where they settle, you have pretty much cases of gender-based violence within these areas. And of course, women are the most would be affected. So these gender inequalities become, of course, a great concern to us. And we ensure that as we are engaging with different partners, we ensure that we work with, for example, the police, the victim support unit, or all the different government agencies and partners to ensure that at the time we're looking at humanitarian response and settling these communities in alternative places, all these bits are actually put in place. Of course, eventually we are looking at community resilience. We want to develop, of course, community resilient, resilient communities, so to speak. And the kind of interventions that we're doing, whether we're talking about livelihoods, whether we're talking about importance of health, education, we really emphasize on providing information in terms of awareness on GBV, but also we also look at how can women be economically be empowered. So as CARE, our approach has always been to look at the social justice side of things, but also looking at the economic justice side of things, and where you ensure that even the women themselves are leading the emergency response and not just being recipients of the response or aid that we're providing, but they're part of the decision making in terms of how they would want to actually be supported and how they can actually be settled. Thank you.
Yeah, great. That's good to hear. So you have a certain focus on women in your line of work. And I guess, Rose, you will be with us saying when it comes to gender, right? I heard that in terms of political reforms, gender is a huge point, right?
It is huge, yes. And I think in a way, what the structuring that has taken place is very positive. We say poverty is female and problems at community level usually are female, and so is humanitarian crisis. They are all female. So one of the positive and most significant things that has happened under this government is that the decision-making positions at the district level, which is really closer to the community, are not only inclusive of women, but the government has ensured that there are more women district commissioners than ever before in the history of Zambia. This has ensured that there are more women leaders at decision-making positions closer to the communities. This is a positive move in the sense that because of the challenges faced by the communities and overburdening women at that level, including in humanitarian crisis, such problems usually play out at grassroots level. And hence, having these DCs at that level, it makes it easier for them to relate to women and women's problems. And vice versa also, it makes it easier for the women themselves to relate to the district commissioners. So all these issues that affect girls, that affect women at that level, now there is a channel through which they can be addressed in a much easier way, or addressed much more effectively because of the presence of fellow women at that level. So, for example, now, even when you talk about some of the reforms like free education, there's no longer a reason for a girl not to go to school, in the preference of a boy, because now there is free education. You talk of economic empowerment. We now have cooperatives. Women and youth are being encouraged to form cooperatives. This is already in the process, with a view to empower them, with a view for them to begin to employ themselves, because there's so much unemployment, not only for the women, but for the youth as well, for the males as well. So cooperatives is another positive step that has been taken by the government. So briefly stated, I can say that the current government has already demonstrated genuine concerns in addressing humanitarian crisis, developmental challenges, and going forward, I see them becoming more and more inclusive. This is just a transition, but you can see that so much already has been done. And in terms of the crisis, which is the core of our discussion now, going forward, you can see that what we need now is just to encourage other players that now they can associate freely with the government. There's no fear of reporting. The media, the local partners, NGOs, international partners now, because of the transparency, because of the freedom of expression, freedom of information, press, and so on. Now it's up to them now to freely associate with the government as partners. There's no longer anything to fear.
Sorry, and in terms of good governing and rule of law, human rights, so there's a huge step towards this aim to just bring it to the Zambian people and just make them more, part of a process where they can themselves determine what their future is, and it is not only a ruling, governing body that is determining their lives. When we prepared, you said that on the grassroots level, political reforms are working too, to allowing people on the ground to decide. What type of initiatives and projects are you preparing or have been implemented already?
There are several initiatives. Mm-hmm. One of the examples is you've heard about ward development committees. These never used to have as much money as they are having now. The money used to be spent at a higher level, but now communities are being empowered to make their own decisions. They are the decision makers in terms of how they prioritize their needs, whether it's healthcare, whether it's schools, whether it's economic empowerment. It's now up to the grassroots to decide at what ward level, through the ward development committee, what they want to do, how they want to empower themselves, because they know their issues better than anybody else. We may know their challenges in general terms, but at specific level, each community knows what they actually want. So that's one form of empowerment that's ongoing right now, which has never taken place before. We used to have, like, for a Kohel constituency, 1 million kwacha, something like that. Less than 2 million for a whole constituency. Now we are having for a constituency 25.3 or so million. It's not a lot of money, but when you compare to the 1 million, this is quite a significant move towards empowering the local communities. And the cooperatives I've already talked about, and the free education that I've already talked about. All those are a new approach, which shows that the government is determined to deliver on the promises of human rights, respect, on the promises of empowering the youth, the women, generally, let me just say the communities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. So there's a lot of, I guess, hope and optimism when it comes to the new and bigger involvement on the grassroots level. Thank you. Chikwe, talking about empowerment, I know that you, as you have the business administration background, are very much in the area of social entrepreneurship and everything. So how can you use this particular vision to help empower people in affected communities, social entrepreneurship?
Thank you so much. So with Care International, of course, and personal, I'm just very passionate about social business development, and this is where you look at the promotion of social entrepreneurship in Zambia.
Yeah.
Just talking to what Rose was saying, the community development funds that the constituency development funds that have now been enhanced in terms of the value, it actually presents that opportunity for women-led organization, but also women groups within our communities to be able to tap into those resources that are coming in. As Care International, our focus in the next couple of years is really looking at how can we work in partnership with women-led organizations, and how can we actually even support women's groups at community level to actually become much more viable. So we know that they're vulnerable, but we'd like them to be we want them to move to that vulnerability where they are now becoming viable. The government has introduced the cooperatives, of course, which is a good platform for them to actually collectively get together and do something that would actually focus there. Mm-hmm. So as Care International and specific to Zambia, we're looking at focusing on market-based approaches that are actually going to build on some of the development works that we have done.
Yeah.
A lot of the livelihoods have been looking at how we can actually be able to support women-headed, for example, households, where they can provide a meal and also most likely get some disposable income when they sell their crops. So our work has really been focused on how can we actually give them right now climate smart agriculture techniques where they can actually do better. But now we want to move. We've given you this knowledge. How can you actually get together and recognizing that you've got the constituency development funds that are right at your doorstep? How can you in solidarity get together so that when you're looking at a savings group, it's just not looking at the mega savings that you can actually bring into the group for you to borrow, but how can you actually be a force to reckon with, get into a cooperative? You can also get access to credit from financial institutions, because now we're looking at this individual being part of a bigger group, and they can collectively be able to work through the cooperatives. So as a team working with, of course, like for example, the Ministry of Agriculture, we're looking at how can we actually promote sustainable livelihoods. And at the same time, because this is new, the new bit I'm talking about with the CDF funding is that this is the first that we have such a huge amount. So it has to be properly planned. So as a development organization and working closely with local NGOs, would like to work with, of course, the leadership, the local government leadership, in terms of just supporting them, how they can actually plan out and how they can equitably distribute and share those resources that are being introduced. Yeah, the youth are key, women are key, girls are key, but I think the community at large is also key. So when we're talking about social entrepreneurship, it's usually a buzzword, but I think it's bigger than that. How can we actually support communities to become economically viable, in the sense that the viability of their either livelihoods or whatever trade they want to get into is something that will see them through in probably 2-3 seasons. So when looking at livelihood, they have access to markets, they've got the right value chains that they actually, in terms of the crops, drought resistant crops, and also access to market, and finally to be able to sustain their households, but also a community at large.
Yeah, that sounds exciting. Is there any? Could you be a little bit more specific when it comes to an example of a market-based approach in terms of crops, in terms of products, to give an idea of how are you ensuring that people have the knowledge of cultivating or producing certain products which do have a market? Could you be a little bit more specific to give us an idea?
Yeah, absolutely. So in Muchinga province where we're working, we are encouraging and promoting farmers to actually grow orange potatoes, orange sweet potatoes. This has got high nutrition value, but they could actually get value in terms of in the market.
Yeah.
We're also doing the same thing with beans. So I'm mentioning this because we're talking about drought resistance. So we're looking at how can we actually have crops that are benefiting the households, but they can actually find ready-made, of course, markets. So these two, sweet potatoes, drought resistance, beans, and soya beans are actually the perfect examples I can actually give you. The other bit is really looking at in the southern province where we have droughts. We're looking at issues, of course, like I said, a community-based adaptation of climate change. It's important so that even when we're looking at them, I've talked about livelihoods and the crops that they can grow, but we're looking at also afforestation and also land and livestock management. When we talk issues of land, again, I know Rose will be able to add that when we talk about land ownership in Zambia, the issues that we have when we talk about women and equality. So that is very important for us to make sure that these, when we talk about crops, land, livestock, and all the techniques that we are working with in terms of the communities are things that they can actually be able to see that they can be sustained for a longer period, but at the same time, they can have that much disposable income to support their families in terms of social basic services when you talk about access to health, education, and any other needs that they would want, of course, to take them into the next season.
Okay, thank you very much. Before we are going into the future and more of a vision, I would like to address two questions coming from the audience. Michael Geisler is asking, how do you consider the African Union as a one voice representing the various countries, ethnicities, and different political systems in Africa? Is it a political factor in the world of politics, or more or less a toothless tiger? So Michael is giving us a broader political picture. Is there a take on it? Rose, is the African Union a toothless tiger, or is it a force to be rendered? And to be seen.
I really wouldn't say it's a toothless tiger. The African Union is occupied by various heads of states at any given time. So you may find that at times it's much more effective than at others. But if you look at its existence, I wouldn't say it's very young, but it has achieved a lot with regard to its plan for a united Africa that can develop the economy of Africa in a more united way than we are, a more integrated Africa. So I wouldn't say it's toothless, because it's on course to achieving its intended goals, that of a united, prosperous Africa. Yes, there have been pitfalls, it's been limping along the way, but Africa's vision at one time or the other will be achieved. Maybe slowly, maybe steadily, but I don't see Africa going backwards on its development agenda or uniting in that sense. So I don't know whether I've answered that question, but I think I have. It's not a toothless tiger. It is maybe a growing tiger.
You were very clear. And Michael has an added question. He was just interested in knowing, I don't know if you are aware of this, the EUAU summit ended a few days ago, and he was wondering if this type of summit does have any form of implications concerning the development of Zambia. Are you aware?
Well, I think it has. I haven't really studied the results of the meeting. I haven't sat down to read through what has taken place, because the meeting only ended yesterday, if I'm not wrong. But I think it was a successful meeting. And when you are in a relationship and you are offered, there are these exchanges of money that has taken place. For example, I don't know, is it 100-something billion euros or dollars? Like I'm saying, I haven't really read that. I think that was a positive development. And it's up to how each country is going to utilize that. What are the priorities in that particular country? And here in Zambia, I see that going a long way in the implementation of our development agenda in the current dispensation, where there's unity, there's no segregation according to which part of Zambia you come from. That tension is easy, has been eased. So there will be prioritization of almost each province or all the Zambian people who can actually utilize those funds, or on which the government can spend, whether to spend it on province A, province B, province C. That fear is no longer there. There's a clear vision as to how we are going to move forward. And with that vision in mind, I think that it was a successful meeting.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, great. Thank you very much, Rose. Chikwe, 52% of Zambians are young people. The youth is there, so there's a huge potential. I would like to go into our final lap of discussion because time is running. Just having an idea of the future. I mean, with so many young people, how can you use this force, this power? How can you educate them to be able to help themselves to move forward and towards a better future? Chikwe.
Thank you, Britta. Yes, of course, this youth bulge that is definitely in Zambia and the rest of Africa.
Yeah.
When you really look at it, there is a lot of opportunity. And I know that the government right now has got a deliberate policy to see how the youths in Zambia could actually be empowered.
Yeah.
The good thing about the youth is that they are fast learners. We're dealing with millennials right now who are actually fast learners. They're very patient and they're looking at ways of making money, of course. And just talking social enterprise is definitely an area where I would actually see a lot of these young people would actually be quite involved, because for a very longest time, they've actually faced a lot of social issues and they have felt that their voices have never been heard. Until now they're seeing that, of course, there's an opportunity that the government has invested. And I know that CARE, including other partner organizations, are also looking at the focus of youth in Zambia. So when we talk about the digital age, there are a lot of opportunities for them to actually be able to get involved. I know a couple of startups that are really good youth-run social enterprises where they've actually been able to showcase their creativity and also some innovative programming where they've actually brought up. Because of this population, for me, it's also important that we start looking at where can we get the best of the value, of course, for the youth. And for Zambia, the agriculture sector is definitely key for its own as a revenue earner, but also where you're looking at labor. But this is not labor that is definitely in exchange for money, of course, economic gain for youth. So we have this opportunity, because I think the greatest issue we're facing is that because of a lot of urbanization, a lot of youth are coming into the city and they're looking at making a quick buck. But in doing that, they get into very serious negative vices where there's a lot of substance abuse, right? And there's a lot of criminal activities, and they actually go and stay in these peri-urban settlements where there's a lot of crime. So for us to make sure, number one is let's look at how we can decongest the peri-urban, of course, the urban areas, and see how we can actually work with, make it attractive for a youth to be at the community level. The constituent development funds are one bit. How can we attract the youth to be able to venture into productive agricultural activities where they can actually be able to earn an income, but also see how their actually families can be built. For me, that is quite very important. We're working in a global village that we're talking, let's go global. So we've got homegrown solutions that our youth can actually be exposed to, but also looking at bringing in the international expertise through NGOs like Care International and other NGOs that can actually work with youths in seeing what else can they learn from out there and be able to become a productive population in Zambia that is actually going to take us into the next century. Thank you.
Yeah, Chika, thank you. Rose, in terms of future and vision, I mean, especially for the younger generation, I mean, the aspect of climate change and the fact that Zambia, for example, is only emitting 0.01% of global emissions, while it is obviously paying the price for the behavior of the developed world, because you are facing floods and droughts and everything as part of the global climate change. Is there a vision? Is there a take of your government, of the government, in terms of how to make the Western world pay or make them mitigate or contribute in a fairer, more responsible way to alleviate suffering in Zambia?
The Western world, we are all partners. So we look at them as partners. How can we work together? We are all on the same globe. We are all affected. I know we are affected, even if the emissions from here are not as much as in the north. but all the same, we live in the global world. People are now, Zambians are living in Europe, in UK, and Europeans are coming to Zambia to invest. So it's really a global world. We are all one. So we should look at this issue of global warming or climate change as one entity. And you will realize that from the word go, after forming government, what the UPND government did was to put in place a ministry for the first time, a Ministry of Green Economy and Environment. That's already in place and it's working. It's got its own programs and policies that are meant to focus on the youth and the women. So I would say that is a positive move in terms of addressing the climate issues. And I know women are the most affected. If you look at women, they are the ones actually who need firewood all the time, because for us, we are looking at the bushes and how we are cutting down the bushes, even if it's a 0 point whatever, but still we are cutting out the bushes. So it doesn't mean we cannot participate in ensuring that the issue of global warming doesn't get out of hand. So in our own small way, we are ready to contribute towards the fight against the global warming. So there are programs to that effect under the ministry, the new ministry. Now, I'd like to make a comment on what Chikwe said on CDF and the various initiatives. Yes, agriculture is really very critical. It's one way where we can really empower the women and men. And it's good that the CDF is equally distributed in all constituencies. It doesn't matter whether it's urban or it's rural. So even in the urbanization issue, this might begin to make our youths in the rural areas stay where they are when they realize that the CDF to assist them to go into agriculture. When they realize there are cooperatives which can assist them to go into agriculture. So I just wanted to make that comment on urbanization, the youth work and so on. In fact, when it comes to digitalization, that's one of our main worries, because Africa, I think digitalization is about 20%. And when you say 20% digitalization, access, we are including South Africa, we are including Kenya, we are including the Maghreb, the North Africa. So Zambia, I think, could even be at 15%. So this is one area of concern. And you know that we have a special ministry where this comes under, because we need to accelerate that if the youths really, or Zambians, are going to benefit from that. Because 15%, 20% is really, you are not even talking about the digital divide. You are talking about digital exclusion. So on that front, we need to work very hard. And this is one of the areas of priority for this government, to increase digitalization access.
Yeah. This will be vital for the future, no doubt about it. Chikwe, I would like to have your opinion on the fact that Zambia has been the least reported country in need last year. Do you have any idea why is that? I mean, they had only care statistics said that there had only been 512 media articles covering the humanitarian situation in Zambia, while, for example, the interview Prince Harry and Meghan Markle gave Oprah generated over 300,000 coverage elements, online, offline, whatever. So obviously people are not willing to really dive deep into misery and poverty, right? It's not fancy, obviously.
I would give two responses to that. The first one, it's a historic, it's something that is quite historical. Yeah. So when you look at Zambia, for the longest time, Zambia has actually been facing very slow onset. Yeah. You know, every annual cyclical, of course, I would say humanitarian crisis, that when it actually, the emergence of that crisis, as I said, it's a slow onset. It actually means that you'll be thinking it's only a couple of people that are affected. So when you have flash floods, it's not like they're affecting a lot of districts at a go. When I started talking about the 64 districts affected, we're probably actually starting with 10, then it moved on till we see a lot of rains actually increasing. Our rain seasons are from around October till maybe April. and the heaviest would be around December, March. And when you really look at this, a lot for this year, it actually happened around January. Again, it was a slow onset. So it's almost where countries or the media would not actually be attracted, because they'll be thinking very few people are affected. Yeah. That's the bit that has actually happened over the last 10 years, be it drought, be it floods, be it fall armyworms that would actually hit particular areas. So that's pretty reason. So it sounds like it's not very attractive. And in such an instance, I do believe that there are certain indications that the government would follow under the Disaster Management and Mitigation Unit, where they now have to declare that this is a full-blown emergency crisis. So which means once that is announced, then you are expecting an emergency appeal to be launched. And this is where you get the international community responding and the local partners to support. That is where I would really speak to. The other aspect is what Rose had earlier said, it's connected to the first, but the absence of information. You see, because some of the areas that are affected are really remote areas. Yeah. So for you to get information as quickly as possible and share it with the international community actually becomes a bigger problem. And that's why for us, our biggest concern has really been, even as an international organization working in Zambia, with other organizations, one of our responses is to immediately work quickly with the government, make sure that we go and assess the situation in an area where we can be able to respond quickly. But I will tell you, even now, there are some areas that are still hard to reach areas. Bridges have been washed away and you still have problems to reach those particular areas. So that is where I would be able, but our ask right now is that humanitarian response should not and must not be selective. Mm-hmm. At whichever sign that there is a call that people are seriously affected in a crisis, whether it's 2 or 3 people, we must respond. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Rose, we are almost, it's only a minute left. Your finishing words, thoughts about the future for hopes when it comes to Zambia. What would you like to give us while we are about to close our discussion?
I think now we are looking at a government that's very open, mm-hmm. that's people-centered, and ready to work with the partnerships, because all these programs which are being put in place, they all require partnerships. Some, they will require skills training. Like I'm saying, all these cooperatives, all these empowerment projects in entrepreneurship, they will require skills training. So that's where our partners, maybe like CARE, would come in, or other partners who have those skills to support the youth, to support the women. I would encourage partnerships at district level, because really that's where the community is. Yeah. And that's where the partnership works. And now we have lots of women, like I said, who are district commissioners, who are actually in coming back to the humanitarian crisis, who are actually in that committee. In fact, they chair the humanitarian committee at that level, at the district level. So I would encourage a lot of partnerships at that level, and the resource sharing, because after all, if you are working for one cause, like I have said now, what GMMU is doing is they do not just inform through the websites and so on the journalists what's happening, or they actually invite them to travel with them to areas which are affected. Yeah. So that has already started. So partnerships, I think that would be it's very important. Yeah. And as you can see, the manner, if you get information from GMMU now, tomorrow, you'll find that all the sports in this country where there's a crisis is covered. Whether it's Chama, whether it's in Procoso, there's something happening all over the country. So we are trying not to be selected. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much, Chikwe and Rose, two passionate women fighting for a better future when it comes to Zambia. And I think it is lovely to have this spirit of hope and optimism. It was our intention not to paint such only a gloomy picture of humanitarian crises, but you gave us an idea of hope and where the path will lead to a better future. So that was great. Thank you so much, Chikwe and Rose, that you could be with us today. Hopefully we will meet up, and hopefully you never make it again into this ranking of care, hopefully, for the future of Zambia. Thank you so much to all of our participants who stayed with us. Interested, thank you very much for the questions you gave us. If you're interested to follow us during the course of the year when it comes to this to CARE's list of the 10 most underreported humanitarian crises, please tune in March 7th when we are going to cover Malawi. Same time here at Friedrich-Naumann Foundation for Freedom and in cooperation with CARE. So this is my finishing words. It is 6:03 Central European Time. Hope you have a nice evening. Thank you very much for staying with us. Please stay healthy and see you very much.
Been a pleasure.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much to the audience. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Have a nice evening. Thank you.